Jump the dolphin.
What?
She was crowd surfing.
Oh, okay. So she's just found a great spot.
She's meeting a party animal. Gotta love her.
She likes your book. She likes your book. Somebody asked you.
Who said that?
There will be no bad mouthing of the book at the book panel, please.
Admittedly, I like the book.
The only book there's not a second one yet.
Yeah. So
Yeah, the sequel came out yesterday.
I'm Ted Anderson. I'm moderating the Pennyroyal Academy Panel. I guess how we're going to handle it. I was thinking I have some questions I can ask Mitch. We can also have audience questions, and then for the last 10 minutes, you said you wanted to do spoiler talk.
Yeah, I wanted to see if this works. I don't know if this will work, but if we can hold off talking spoilers on this book the whole time, then the last 10 minutes you can go if you don't want to, if you haven't read it yet or whatever. I don't know if that's going to work, but we can try it.
Half the audience leaves.
So you go now.
Yeah. So yes, Mitch Larson has written Pennyroyal Academy. It came out as of last
October.
The first in a planned trilogy, I think, is the current news.
Yes.
About a girl named Eleven and her adventures at Pennyroyal Academy proper. So,
That's right.
How many of you can people hold up their copies if we have copies?
I forgot to bring
Hey!
It's down here, I'm using it.
They're also selling them in the vendor hall. If you'd like to buy my book.
so much as they can buy your book twice.
I'm
Yes. It travels well.
So for people who haven't read it yet, do you have a brief summary you'd like to give about what it is?
Sure. It's it takes place in a Grimm's fairy tale world where girls go to this academy to train as princesses so they can protect innocent people from witches, and boys train as knights to protect the realm from dragons, which are the two big menaces of the day. So that's kind of it. I'm not good at pitching it.
Well, I mean, you got it pitched, and you already did the work there.
Yes.
And your main character, a girl named Eleven, who had, whose name Evie or Evie, actually.
I was like Evie, but then everybody said Evie, but it was always Evie to me.
I always thought
Yeah.
Evie.
Evie is canon. How about that?
That's a standard. I wanted to ask, so starting on sort of a very basic, simple question, where did the name come from? Pennyroyal, because
Well, in the book in general, I wanted to stick as close to Grimm's fairy tales as possible. So she's a character who, when you first meet her, doesn't remember who she is, and she's running through an enchanted forest. It's very Grimm's fairy tale. And Pennyroyal Academy was a placeholder title, and I could never think of anything better, and my editors liked it as a title, so that became the title just from inertia.
I like it if you break it down. Pennyroyal, there's this undertone to a lot of the book. It's sort of a class element to it of princesses who were princesses of the blood, who were born into being a princess, and then those who are from the lower classes who are sort of recruited up to become princesses. The name kind of evokes both of those. I thought that was interesting.
And also, it just sounds fairy tale.
It does, yeah. That's all the names in one of the maps in the lovely frontispiece. You'll notice here as well, with all the names that call back to elements of Grimm fairy tale names. You got Brentano, Gold Harbor, Witch Head Bay. I like that you also have the town here of Bettelheim.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Bruno Bettelheim was a child psychologist who wrote a book entirely about sort of fairy tales and how they help kids in a weird way, even the really dark, freaky ones. And I know you specifically thank Bruno Bettelheim's sort of work in here, and I was wondering if you'd talk a little bit about that, about the darkness of fairy tales.
Yes. I'll try. I'm going to give you just the backstory of this because it's tied into it, and it's weird when I think about it because this book is very much tied into animation and pony, even in weird ways. But this started out as a cartoon. I pitched it to Disney Channel like 9 years ago. It's the first thing I ever sold. They bought it, and we developed it as a cartoon for a while. And at that point, it was a straight parody. It was called Princess Boot Camp, and it was just a parody of Disney princess culture. So there was like glass slipper obstacle course, and it was just a parody.
Well, there's the fairy drill sergeant, for
Yes.
example, in the...
The fairy drill sergeant is the only thing that survived from that pitch to this book. That's the only thing that's the same. So we developed it for a while, and into oblivion, basically. Nothing came of it. The whole department went away. And but before that happened, there were storyboards produced, and I got to audition. I auditioned Demi Lovato before she was Demi Lovato. And Busy Phillips, I don't know if you know her. She was on Freaks and Geeks. They were going to be in the show, but it didn't become a show. So I got the rights back, and a friend of mine's sister was a book agent in London and knew the idea, and told me to write it as a book, which had never occurred to me. And I kind of didn't really think much of it until I found that book by Bruno Bettelheim. It's called The Uses of Enchantment. And my wife just had it, and I thought, it's about fairy tales, so I'll check it out, because that's what my idea is. And I read it, and it's absolutely incredible. It's written in like the 70s, I think, and it's basically kind of a Freudian analysis of Grimm's fairy tales, and he picks out a couple main ones to analyze deeply. But the basic premise of that book is that it's important for kids to go through these dark emotions of fear and, you know, abandonment and all this kind of stuff. And all the Grimm's fairy tales, I think all of them, maybe there's a couple exceptions, end happily ever after. And he's saying they have to go through these horrible, dark, scary things, but you come out all right at the end. And kids learn coping skills by going through this. And when you sanitize it, Disneyfy it, and pull out the really scary emotional stuff, then it's just sugar. Then there's nothing in there. And that was totally resonating with me, because my idea was sugar. That's all it was. And so I was like, oh, I could make this kind of older, more middle grade, and actually have some kind of emotional or psychological depth to it, have it be actually scary, have the characters go through hard things. And by nature of being a military-style academy, you know, they can get kicked out at any minute. I wanted that threat there. It's like, you're not guaranteed to be here all the way through.
There's also the added external threat of the witches and the dragons, and
right.
there's several scenes where like refugees are coming through the town, or you're hearing about horrible attacks and massacres. And
Yeah.
there's a real. This sounds weird. It sort of sounds like a demeaning way to put it, but this is not a kid's book.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because like the manuscript I sold was very different from this. It was much younger than this even, and the more I worked on it, and the more I developed it, the older it got, the darker it got, the more serious it got. And it was partially, to get to this point, it was really strange. I had a producer for a movie that didn't exist before I had a publishing deal.
Welcome to Hollywood, folks.
I finished the whole manuscript, and I didn't know what to do with it because I didn't know anything about books. So I managed to get it to an agent in New York who said she wanted to represent it. Her agency had a deal with an agency in film agency. So I got a film agent out of the deal too. And she called me up and said, I just had an idea. I think we should give this to Reese Witherspoon. She's starting a new company and she's looking for things to produce. And I said, yeah, why are you calling me? Just do that. So she did, and then she's like, Reese read it and she really likes it. She wants to have lunch, and I'm like, okay, what's the lunch? And she's like, Reese is trying to sell you on her company. Like, I'm going to lunch with her, deciding if I want her to produce it or not. And again, I'm like, why am I having the lunch? Like, yes.
What kind of sandwiches are they? Like, what are they serving?
And it was an incredible lunch because that's what it was. She was pitching me, and she was telling me what was important to her in it. And she listed 3 things, and they were like the exact 3 things I loved the most. So I just knew she was the perfect partner. And then I also remembered a few years ago, she got a Lifetime Achievement Award on MTV, and she gave this kind of controversial speech because she went up there and she's like, I'm proof to all you, you know, up-and-coming actors or whatever, that you can make it in Hollywood without a sex tape or a scandal or whatever. And Kim Kardashian was in the audience. But I just, like, that idea of what she was saying, I'm on board with that entirely. And this book is about being a good person, and, you know, you actually fight by being good. I know that's weird, but...
Yeah, there's the four virtues of being a princess. Okay, let me see if I can remember. Courage, compassion, kindness, and
discipline in the middle of the military element.
It is. I mean, that's a weird. I say weird. It's an interesting take on the sort of princess culture, as you mentioned, in that there's a very military, aggressive even bent to what is normally a frothy and frilly and bubbly aesthetic. It's a different take on what a princess means.
Yeah. It's well, I read all the group's fairy tales multiple times, and I started noticing there are a lot of princesses in there. There are a lot of princesses who do sit in towers and say, "Come and save me," and all that. But there are a lot of princesses who don't, and who save the princes, and who are really devious and nasty. And there was just a huge spread of types of princesses. And it's become this cliche of pink, helpless tower, over the years that's what it's become. But if you go back to those original fairy tales, there's a wide range of personality types for these princesses. Excuse me. So I wanted to get that there's more to it than sitting in the tower waiting to be saved.
Yeah, I'm curious actually, what were the 3 things that Reese Witherspoon liked? Or is that spoilers?
No, it was just years ago.
Alright. I'm just curious if you still had the list on hand.
No, I really can't remember.
The list of 3 great things about my book. And something else about the archetype, you were talking about sort of types of princesses. I like the idea, for example, that there are, if you look at the back of the book, the crest of the academy and sort of the 4 major figures that show up as archetypes in this are princesses, knights, witches, and dragons. And those are sort of the 4 great fairy tale archetypes in a weird way.
Yes. The only one missing is wolves.
Oh, wolves, yeah. Or I was actually thinking of peasants, the peasant,
right.
the peasant boy who has to find his.
That's right. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of not weird heroism, but there's a lot of sort of lower level heroism that shows up in some of the Grimms as well.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned you have a young daughter. Is this also a reaction to sort of the princess culture that she's being exposed to, or?
Well, I finished it before she was born. As a matter of fact, I was in the hospital when they called to say they were going to give it to Reese. I was in the hospital. But yeah, I mean, I just think culturally it's nice. It's a nice, refreshing idea that, like Reese said at that award show, that the culture is so kind of coarse now, and everything's shocking all the time, and you just got to out-shock the last shock. It's exhausting, and it's kind of an old-fashioned feel to this book, but it's about, they train to become good people, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, there's that emphasis on it's not like you're training to stab a witch in the face. You're training
right.
to have compassion for others and to trust others as well. I like there was an example basically a trust fall on a fairy tale
right.
level in the book as well, which isn't so much a trust fall as it is a trust leap. Do any of the audience members have questions? I don't want to keep talking forever. I got a sore throat. But do you want to have people just come up to the mic?
Sure.
I guess central mic here. And we're gonna restrict spoilers to the last 10 minutes. So hold off on specific plot details or questions if you can.
There is an audio book. I wouldn't recommend it. The woman, she's got an amazing voice, but she reads every sentence exactly the same.
Oh, Reese Witherspoon.
It just gets a little tedious to listen to because she never varies her sentences. But it does exist. Sorry.
No, it's not one of the fans here to do it. They'll do it better.
Nicole wanted to do it, Nicole Oliver.
Oh.
But it was too late.
This mic,
She's not
oh,
British.
oh, jeez.
Hot mic.
Yeah. So a couple questions. The first one is, you said with your Princess Boot Camp, with the show, it was being developed, but then it just kind of ended. What kind of happens in that where it can be developed and it can get to having people audition for it and get so far into the process and then just get cut off like that? How
It was a
does that
weird thing because they had a department there called Shorty McShort Shorts. I know it's such a dumb stuff. I didn't name it. And you could pitch shows to them, and they would make a 5-minute pilot, and they would air them in a block. And if it got a good response, they would turn it into a show. So it was a way for them to make cheap, small pilots for shows. And Fishhooks came out of that. The Disney show Fishhooks was one with mine, the same. That was further along, so that would survive the culling. But we developed it for a while, and they hired a new vice president. He killed the whole department. Shorty McShorts entirely was killed. So mine, was just dead.
kind of went down with the ship.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then my other question is, with the artwork on the book, like the crest, like on the back, the crest. Did you design that, or did you have
draw.
like a you can't draw?
I can't draw any.
So was it like you gave the basic idea to someone of what you wanted, and then they?
Yeah, well, it's a weird thing because I have no experience with publishing at all prior to this, so I didn't really know how it works. But my editor, it's Penguin that published it. My editor at Penguin told me they had somebody they wanted to do the cover, and I was like, oh, so I don't really have any say. And they went to the guy and he did a cover, and then they sent it to me, and I was so nervous because like, what if I hate this? What if they got it wrong? And it was basically that, and I just absolutely loved it. It changed a little bit, like type moved a little bit, it became less pink and more purple, and a couple other minor changes, but that's basically his first draft. And I saw it and I was like, this is exactly what the cover should be. And then the same guy did the crest. And yeah, I told him what the quadrants should be. And I got to give notes, like maybe put some laurels around the outside to make it look more official and stuff like that. And then the map on the inside was a guy that I've worked with at Cartoon Network and Disney Channel. He's just a friend of mine, he's a storyboard artist. And I asked him if he'd do it, and Penguin agreed to that. And that was much better because we needed to sit down and go over, because I had already written the book, so I had to read it again and be like, oh, this place is here, then that means this has to be here. So he and I got to sit down and just like plot it out. And then he put all these little monsters in there and stuff. And it was cool because Penguin was like willing to let me use my own guy.
Yeah, it was kind of the give and take.
Yes.
Awesome.
But they also had their guy they wanted to use, and I'm really glad they did because he's now doing a new cover for the paperback that comes out in October. It's totally different, but it's the same artist, and I gotta say it's really cool. I mean, I love this cover, but I like the new one too. So
Awesome.
I just realized, though, there is one problem with the map, which is this is the one time where the map should have a section that says, here there be dragons. And it doesn't.
That's true. You're right.
There's like the dragon land.
That's right.
And then last question: when does the main character get wings?
It had to happen, you guys. Come on.
It did. I needed to say it. Thank you.
What I want to say, I think somehow you got to work like a musical Tesla coil in as a plot device or something.
Yeah,
That'd be really cool, but let's say you get to that third book, closing out the trilogy, everyone's got wings. Why not? And it's like the movies are a huge success, we gotta keep it going. And you're like, oh, well, that was the end, and like, what am I gonna do now? Do you have to retcon all that, or?
What, the wings?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
As long as the money keeps coming.
Well, we've already had conversations about going beyond 3, so I always thought of it as 3, and I had ideas for the whole thing. But now that we've talked about it, I have ideas on how to keep going.
So you always like try to close it with a way of reopening it? Is that the idea?
Well, I think like my favorite stories end that way, anyways, with sort of implied continuation. You know what I mean? Like,
And they lived happily ever after. I mean, there's still all that ever after to go.
yeah.
Yeah, but continuing after you jump the shark, I mean, what's the point?
Oh, it's a dolphin, right?
Well, jumping the dolphin is when you keep going, though.
Right. Yes.
All right, so I read on the website they said you had something going on with the book and Lionsgate.
Right.
So how's that going about?
Yes. So re-signed on to produce. Then I got a book deal, and then I got a movie deal, all within 6 months. It was nuts. It was like an amazing 6 months.
And a
that's
daughter.
Yes. That's, yeah. Of course. That's why I wasn't on season 4 of Ponies, because all that was happening, and I got hired to write the script, which was really exciting because they very easily could have hired somebody else. And it's going good. It's very slow because everything is, and it would be an expensive movie.
Yeah.
But there's a couple directors they're looking at now who are really exciting. One of them is an ex-Pixar director, and I saw his presentation. It was so good. I was looking through it and I was like, this is exactly what I would have done if I was directing it. So I got... No, he's a short director. He's not a feature yet. That's what he wants to do. So it's in development. It's in process. And my executive over there just got promoted to vice president, so that can only be good.
Well, hopefully that goes well for you, and thank you.
Thanks.
Have you ever actually used Pennyroyal?
No, but are you going to say what I think you're going to say?
It's really pungent, and
Yeah.
if you spill it in your house, your whole house reeks of Pennyroyal for weeks, from what I hear. I was smart enough not to spill it.
What do you use it for?
Killing fleas.
Really?
Yeah, we had an infestation once.
That's kind of a nice metaphor, actually.
Yeah.
I like
Wiping out parasites, cleansing the house of...
Yeah, that was intentional.
Spoiler alert, you win.
What is your favorite Brothers Grimm tale, and why does it resonate with you so much?
My favorite one is called The Juniper Tree. There's actually like tons of Brothers Grimm references in there from obscure ones that you really have to know the fairy tales to see them, but they're all over the place. And The Juniper Tree is in the sequel. I took a character out of The Juniper Tree and put her in the sequel of this book. But basically in that one, as they all are, a guy's wife dies, he remarries, they have 2 kids, and the stepmother, for whatever reason, hates the younger brother and tries to kill him all the time, because that's what they do in these stories. So she finally kills him, and the sister is just grief-stricken and buries him under the juniper tree. And how did it go? He comes back as a bird, and it's just like the most awesome revenge tale. The bird comes back and like kills the stepmother, and it's so cool. But it's also really cold-blooded, because it's like his own mom just hates him to the point where she's trying to kill him all the time and finally succeeds. But the dad doesn't believe the daughter that the mother did it. It's really good. It's really cool. Yeah, totally.
Well, I was coming up here and I was thinking, like, what am I going to ask you? Because first I wanted to nitpick at you and say, like, everybody's saying this is a new book, but it came out last year or it came out before that? Because everything I see, the printing says 2014. But I decided not to worry about that. And then I was going to ask, how much did you pay Reese Witherspoon to comment on how great the book was? But I figured I wasn't going to get the answer I wanted out of that. So I figured if anything else, because as I mentioned to you before, you know, when I got you to sign the book and everything, I went in, I bought the book originally just like, oh, look, the subliminal messaging worked, and haha, look, I'm reading it. So if anything else, I do want to say, I mean, what was, or maybe you answered this before I got here, so I apologize if I'm asking questions that have been asked, but what was your initial, like, I want to say motivation or inspiration for, like, hey, this would make an entertaining story and only I can write it? If that is such your personality, I mean, that's how I see you in my head anyway. I mean,
well, I mean, it's sort of what I talked about. It was such a long evolution. It was a cartoon originally, and that was more cynical. I just wanted to sell a show.
Right.
And it, you know, that's kind of funny, and it was just a funny thing. But then it was when I read that book, The Uses of Enchantment, that I thought, oh, it could be more. And I had started to get into it and think about who the character would be. And then it came to me that this girl who doesn't know who she is and has to figure out who she is. And middle grade novels are such an excellent place to do self-discovery. That's all Harry Potter is who am I? And a lot of middle grade books are who am I? Because it's such a great question, especially when you're a teenager. So, I don't know, over the course of years, it all kind of just came to...
It accumulated, so
yes.
finally it's like, wait.
It's like, I gotta
Page
do
one.
this. And then, of course, once I finally got it going and I was almost finished with it, I saw this book come out called The School for Good and Evil. And I was like, of course. And it's gonna come out before mine. And I read it and it wasn't really the same at all. I mean, it's kind of the same idea, but it's not the same at all. So it wasn't a big deal, but that was really deflating.
Right.
And he got a movie deal, and his movie was going to come out before mine, but I just found out from my agent that his movie is being started over. So I'm like, I'm ahead of the game because I got a script.
Thank you, sir. Here's your cash. The rest of it's in the car. Thank you very much. Well, then, thank you very much for that. Again, like as I mentioned before, the book has really captured me, and I'm not trying to sound like a suck-up. I do want to say, end my thing with this, though. And spoiler alert for any of you who have not read it yet, though. I'm not going too far. I'm not going too far.
Okay.
It's just the first little chapter like that. You describe her wearing spider web silk.
Yeah.
I have to say, I am a fairly imaginative person, and I can almost always like picture this right there.
Yeah.
Picture that. That is the hardest thing for me to try and imagine, because it's like, is it beautiful or is it just really creepy? Because like there's still spiders in it.
You're not the first person to say that.
I can't decide, but I do want to say, just from reading the first chapter, that was a big part that really like, oh, let's find out more. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. And you can see in the first chapter, Hansel and Gretel is clearly there. You know.
Yeah, very much so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hello.
Hey.
So, when transitioning from television to novels, was there any challenges that you had to overcome from screenplays to
Yes.
a
It
novel?
was virtually impossible. The hardest thing for me was that I sold the manuscript, then I sold the movie and got hired to write the script. So I was revising the book at the same time I was writing the screenplay, and they're totally different skill sets. And I kept noticing when I was revising the book that I would slip into present tense, because all screenplays were written in present tense. This is written in the past tense. I just kept putting screenplay things into the book, and then I'd go back and find them and did it again. And in books you can say what characters are feeling and thinking, and you're not allowed to do that in screenplays. But the biggest thing was, my first draft of the screenplay, based off the book, was 295 pages long, which is roughly a 5.5-hour movie. So I had to cut it more than in half, which was absolute torture. I had to cut over half the book out of the script. And in the process of doing that, I was like, oh, you know what, I don't really need that. So I revised the book entirely again. I cut 200 pages out of the book. And I think now when I read it, I cut too much out. But it was interesting. It was an interesting process that was really hard and horrible. Some writer, I think it was John le Carre, said, adapting your own novel is like doing surgery on yourself, something like that. And it kind of felt like that, because how do you cut half your own story? To me, everything in there is important. But if there's some other guy or girl who was hired to adapt it, they could easily say, well, you don't need this, and you don't need this. But I didn't have that perspective, so.
Cut the dragons, like just cut them out entirely.
No dragons.
No dragons.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
So when the fairy drill sergeant showed up, I was a little worried that you were going to fall into kind of Hollywood military stereotypes.
Yeah.
But when you actually got into the thick of the training, it felt a lot like what I went through in basic training, example.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was wondering, was that, like, did you look into that, or
Yeah.
was that a stab in the dark?
No, I did a lot of research on the various basic trainings, branches of the military, and special ops schools and things like that. And again, it was I didn't want to do a parody of that, of basic training. It was trying to find a way to not be parodying the military or fairy tales, but to kind of blend them into an actual thing that felt kind of real, I guess. But yeah, I did a lot. Like at the end, I don't think this is giving anything away, but you know where they're climbing, they're piled on top. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
That was straight out of a documentary I watched about basic training.
Yep. That was kind of awful to read, actually.
Oh, really?
It made me hurt just like remembering some of the stuff I've been through. So.
Oh no, sorry.
It's a good pain.
Okay. Yeah, and in the sequel too, I've tried to do that too, and refresh myself on these basic training things, and find things that you guys went through that I could actually use in a fairy tale world, and not have it be ridiculous.
Pro tip, have them carry a lot of logs.
That's in the second one. That exact thing is in the second one. That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, you'll see it.
All right.
I was wondering what your inspiration was for Evie as you were writing her, and like what the image you had of her as you were writing.
Right.
Like, what
Maybe we should save that one.
Well, you had
spoiler time.
Well, you had something you mentioned earlier. I heard you were talking about.
Oh,
You had
pictures?
yeah, pictures of actors.
Because it's always on a TV show. When you're writing a TV show and you don't know the voices, it's really hard to come up with dialogue. And it's the same with this. I didn't have anything to go on, so my wall next to my desk, this side is all witches and mountains and stuff, and over here is all actors whose voices I wanted to think of. And it's probably super cliche that I had Emma Watson, because, you know, there's already a lot of Harry Potter in my book. Not enough, not close enough. But her voice was the one I wanted to hear with Evie. So I watched all these YouTube clips of her and interviews and just tried to get her voice in my head. And then there she was, right here at my desk. So she was always in my head. And then I had them for all of them, like the troll, rumpled shirt sleeves. Do you know who Eddie Izzard is?
Oh.
He's a British comedian. And I had his picture up there, even though he doesn't look like a troll. Just the voice, you know. It's,
Hunched over.
yeah. I have all these bookmarks of YouTube clips for all the actors. So anytime I forgot or, oh, I haven't written this one in a while, I just go back and watch the videos again, listen to their voices. And a variation too. Some movie clips, some interviews, so you can hear them in different situations. That works for me, but I mean, everybody's got their own techniques.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, mine actually kind of ties into that. I was just wondering, ideally, who would you cast in the movie?
Well, it's hard to say because they're kids. You know, they're roughly 15, and that's not a huge pool of like name actors to choose from, especially since it would be 2 years from now or whatever when it was made.
Yeah.
The adults are obviously easier to deal with. But I don't know. I really don't know. I have who I had up there, but I don't know if they'd actually be good in the movie. Like to me, sorry, excuse me. Melora was Kate Beckinsale. So her voice, and I do think 10 years ago she would have been, or 15 years ago she would have been perfect. She's way too old now, but. So I can have a dream cast for when they were younger.
Was the movie gonna be live action or animated?
It's live action. There was a big debate about that. Oh, that was one of the things Reese said in our meeting. Was I said to her, "What do you think, live action or animated?" And she said, "Definitely live action." I said, "Yes, absolutely."
Okay, cool.
Okay, I'm wondering, after you finish the trilogy, are you hoping to get more book deals and keep on doing books like this?
Yeah. I think I might have sold one. I didn't even mean to. I was meeting with my editor, and we were talking about the sequels to this. And I just said to her, I have an idea for a series for boys, same age range. And later in the conversation, she's like, okay, so maybe we'll buy this one and then that other series you were talking about. And I was like, I'm trying to play it cool. I'm like, cool, okay. She hasn't mentioned it since, but I think she might have bought it, so. I like, the whole thing has reminded me that this is why I went into writing, was to write books. I didn't want to write for TV and film. I got into it because I thought it'd be easier to make a living, and it is. It definitely is. But this is reminding me, like, oh yeah, this is what I wanted to do, to write books. So, ideally, yeah, I'd keep doing it.
Oh, and also, when I get home, Twilight's going to be saving my spot.
Oh, awesome. Of course.
I'm more from the writing and comic side of the world, and over there, we're still trying to figure out how the world works now, because if you've published something in one format, very often your publisher will publish it digitally because it's not the license that you have. And so sometimes writers don't get any royalties for that because they signed for this contract, not that contract.
Yeah.
And so I'm used to a world of deception and machinations where you have to be extremely careful and have your lawyer on hand all the time. And you're talking about this like, you said a studio got the rights. And I assumed that's it, you're done now. You have no right, but then you publish the book, which is mind-blowing. And I mentioned that to my friends last night, and they were like, how does that even work? Are you just extremely lucky?
I had the book deal before the movie deal.
Oh.
So they optioned, they still haven't purchased the book. They've optioned the book.
Ah, okay, genius.
Yeah, so an option is standard is an 18-month period of time where they have sole right to develop the movie version.
Okay.
After that 18 months, they either give it back to me or they can re-option it for another 18.
Thank you.
So
that makes perfect sense.
They don't actually buy the book until they've got a director and a cast and a budget and they're ready to go. They greenlight it, then they purchase it from me, and then I don't have any rights.
Genius. Okay, thank you. From out here in the social media world, we assume that everything is machinations and intentional. And
I do too.
But it's like, no, so just being a nice guy and having fun works. Thank you.
Well, I have an amazing lawyer who I trust, and I read everything. I don't understand any of it, but I read all the contracts as best I can because I don't trust anybody either. And it does seem like kind of standard, like nobody's really trying to steal from you.
We're just all trying to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. Thank you.
No problem.
Hi. Are there any plans to have Reese Witherspoon in the movie?
Yes, she is. She in her contract. I have the contract in my files because I love it. She's producer and she's going to play the ferry drill sergeant.
Oh my god.
That's the one she wanted. She got to pick, and that's the one she wanted.
And is there an estimate for when the movie could come out?
There's no way to know. I mean, they're looking at directors now. So this is all new to me too. I've never set up a movie before. They're going to directors. If they get a director they like, they'll try to get some cast, and then they'll put the budget together, and then they'll say, yes, we're going to make it, or no, we're not. But it's going to be an expensive movie, and you know, I know how slim the odds are of any movie ever getting made, so I'm not holding my breath, but things are still moving forward, so that's always good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi. I was kind of wondering, now that you've done TV and books and now a little bit into movies, what are some of the major differences in the styles of writing, I guess?
They're entirely different. Have you ever seen a screenplay, what it looks like?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has all these weird blocks and margins, and there's stuff that, you know.
Yeah, like there's weird, like
weird
blocking
spacing,
and
yeah.
then
Things in parentheses.
Yeah.
It just looks weird. And it's also, I did a panel on Cutie Mark Chronicles where I showed some script pages, and it's a game. Excuse me, in a pony script, you got 30 pages.
Yeah.
And you can do little tricks to make it go from 31 pages to 30. Like, instead of saying Apple Bloom speaks, you say Apple Bloom says, and you buy yourself one character. And it moves over, it moves up, all of a sudden you're at 30 pages.
Yeah. And then what are some of the like best parts of each and worst parts of each, I guess?
I'm more comfortable in screenplays just because I've been doing it longer, and I know those tricks and the shorthands you can use. Like, again, in the same script, where Rainbow Dash is about to race the bullies, and Fluttershy is out there, and she's going to start the race. I just said in the script, Fluttershy has the race is about to start. It's like a James Dean street race, and I can just say that, and the animators know exactly what that means, exactly what that looks like, and I don't have to describe everything and say the crowd is there and Fluttershy's got a flag. I don't have to describe all that, and I can do it in one sentence, and everybody knows what that looks like. But in a book, in a screenplay, I'm telling the animators, here's the story. In a book, there's no animator step. And it's also, this is a tough one too, because it's a fairy tale world, so I couldn't really use modern language like that. I couldn't reference James Dean in this. And I read this now, and I'm just like cringing the entire time. I can't believe I published this. There's so much describing. I would change so much about this. Not necessarily the story, but the way it's written. But, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
There it is.
And I guess that kind of goes into my last question of, do you enjoy like the, how in screenplays you can just say things like the James Dean race compared to where this you have to go into like the more detail? What do you like more, the just being able to say those short things and have it be like that, or do you like being able to go into the deeper, like thicker into it, I guess?
I guess I like screenplays more because I'm just used to it. I don't feel comfortable writing a book yet. And reading it this last time was really useful because I saw all kinds of stuff I'm not going to do next time. I learned a lot reading my book after being away from it for like 6 months. Of like, oh, don't do that, change this. So hopefully the next one will be better and easier. In fact, it was. I submitted a manuscript, and it was definitely easier to write, and I felt a lot more comfortable with it, confident with it. But the screenplays, it's so easy for me to come up with like a little, like in the 100th episode yesterday, where they're going down in the DJ booth, and the Twyla Kane comes. In the script, it just says, it's just madness, all the characters are piled on top and blah, blah, blah. And then they hit a carelessly discarded Twyla Kane. And like, to me that made me laugh, because who discarded it and why was it carelessly? Like, it's just funny. There's no point to it, it was just kind of funny, but I could do that in a more modern book, but in a book like this where it takes place in a medieval sort of world, I can't do that. So there's more rules to the language with this that I find difficult. And I just know how to do screenplays better. This is more rewarding and ultimately more fun, but I'm not as confident with it.
Gotcha. Awesome, thank you.
Thanks.
A little off tangent, but still literature related. Have you had the chance to read any fan fictions from the Brony community?
I haven't. We're not allowed to.
Oh, bummer.
And that's not just Hasbro either. I always got to say this. Like, I worked for a director when I lived in New York, he was a big director. He's been directing movies since the '60s. And every time somebody sent us a script, we'd have to send it back unopened with a letter attached to it saying that we're not legally allowed to look at this. So it's sort of industry standard. Because if I read your fanfic and then I make an episode, you could sue me, and more importantly, you could sue Hasbro. So, you know, Hasbro, Disney, whatever, they have a policy where it's like, if you're working on something, don't read it. And it's just deniability, you know, it's just like, I don't want to steal your ideas.
Do you think you'll ever read, like when you're, you know, released from your work?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some I've heard about that
Little
sound kind of
Dashi,
intriguing.
Cupcakes, Rainbow Factory.
That one I've heard about.
Pennyroyal Academy Panel.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks.
Yeah, how do you feel about just developing characters that you've actually created type thing versus trying to, I don't know, maybe wreak havoc on other people's creations? And like, do you think it's just easier? Or
No, it's really hard, and that was the thing that made me, when I read this, I was like, oh man, I really did not do a good job with these other characters. And I'm addressing that now in the sequel, like, okay, now I gotta figure out how to make these real characters. Because Pony, I can take Lauren's characters, and it's easy for me to say, you know, I'm trying to think of something I came up with that, I guess the way that Rarity and Rainbow Dash behave in Sonic Rainbow, I can just do that. Have them act that way and be like, what do you think of this? And Lauren will say yes or no. You know, it's having somebody to answer to, and it's sort of more freeing in a way, weird way. With a book was absolutely terrifying because it's just like endless possibilities. Every choice I would make, I'm thinking there's probably 100 better choices than this one, but I gotta choose something.
just second guess all the time?
Yeah, second guessing the entire time. With Pony, there's so many rules in place that you don't do that. It's more freeing. So.
The other thing I would ask them too, if you've done like the scripts for the TV versus now with the movie going on, do you feel like it's a little less confining where you're always trying to work in those 3 acts and have commercials and having those like potentially pacing issues? Like,
yeah.
I think that Discord one, like it's really hard to fit in those cliffhangers, like
right.
the very first one.
Yeah, there's no commercials in here. Obviously, I mean, there's a rough 3-act structure because that's just the way that's the way I've been trained to do storytelling.
But you can make them any length, any act you want, and
that's the thing. In a feature film, it's like 110, 120 pages because a page of script is a minute of film. In a cartoon, it's like a 30, 35 page script. You have beginning and an end, and you can't go longer than that. There's a box you got to put it in, and that's easier. That's a lot easier than having nothing and just it could be whatever. So.
Hey, I don't have a question, but I did a doodle of what I think Evie looks like.
Oh, cool.
It's probably like wrong and a little romanticized, but would you like to see it?
I would love to see it.
That's art is okay, mostly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mostly.
Well, especially since this isn't, it's a book, it's not a visual book.
Oh, true.
Oh my God, that's awesome. That is so cool. Don't say that, that's a spoiler. That's awesome. No, that is very, very cool.
Thank you.
I love it.
Can I take a look?
What? Oh, yeah.
I took a picture of it after.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Me? I was wondering if there is ever going to be a Pennyroyal Academy D20 book, because there's D20 books for, you know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters.
I don't know what that is.
So,
Yeah, I did write a spoiler in it, actually.
and it's owned by Hasbro,
Oh my gosh.
which you have
That's
a relationship
super
to. So I was thinking it would be easier for you to pitch Pennyroyal Academy as a D20 source book.
I like that idea.
Thank you.
This is something I don't know if I have the right to do that or not. In my contract, I don't know if I do have the right to sell a game or if.
So
or
the
if
company that
Penguin
owns the game.
I don't know
the
if
game
it would
system.
be because my contract for the movie had all this stuff about like theater, like if it was on Broadway, Pennyroyal Academy on Broadway. I don't have the right to do that. They do. I don't know about games. don't know. I'd have to check into it. Yeah, it's a really good idea, because it is kind of an action-y story, so.
I mean, Pirates of Dark Water got a D20 game. Thanks.
I'm gonna go to Hasbro and pitch it.
Okay, you wrote for film, you wrote a script for a film, you wrote for shows, and you've written a book. Which of those out of those three, which is the easiest and the hardest to write for?
This is definitely the hardest, because like I was saying, there's no borders. So it's just a blank page that you can put anything on. And every time you put something on, you're just thinking, is that the best thing to put there? But, and so in that sense, a TV script is the easiest, because you know it's 30 minutes, you know there's 2 commercial breaks. There's so many things built into it. I heard it described by some screenwriting teacher that, you know, telling a story is like an ocean, and the more, I don't know how to say this word, buoys. The more buoys you put in the water, the shorter distance you have to go, the easier it is to get across. And so when you have built-in act breaks, there's a buoy there, and there's one there, and then a midpoint, there's another one there. So the more of those things you can have, the better it is. And in a book, there aren't any. You're in the ocean.
You've talked about the tools that you use with animating, like Final Cut Pro and things like that. Are there any tools you're using that are different for like keeping track of characters and stories?
This?
Yeah. Or are you like little Post-it notes and all over the walls?
That's what I do. There's one called Scrivener that I know a lot of people love.
Yeah.
I have cards on the wall. My wall is just like, it's like Homeland.
Perfect.
It's like, there's arrows and tape and cards and pictures.
Add strings so that when they eventually find you in your room locked.
I just find it easier to actually physically walk around and say like, well, that doesn't connect to anything, and then I can just take it off. I find that easier to do. And that's also what they did on My Little Pony.
Oh, cool.
We put cards on the wall. So I kind of used to it, I guess.
So how do you get like the creativity? Like, what's your method for figuring out what you're going to write?
Okay, so I always find writing advice weird because I don't know if it's, like I can tell you what works for me. I have no idea if it's gonna work for you, or, I kind of live to try to surprise myself. I know that's like a weird thing because I'm the one writing, but if I can make myself laugh or like, where did that come from? I'm just writing it and it just comes out. Those are the moments that I love because then I think it'll surprise other people too. You know, Gummy's monologue. It's not like I was thinking, what can I do for Gummy? I was just like, it needs to be quiet. Oh, what if Gummy's in the window? And I had him there in the script with all the Party 1 characters, like Lancelot, and they were all sitting with him. And they're silent. But it's it's just like typing stuff, and then oh, that was really cool. Then that spins your mind into a different direction. So it's sort of that. And then also just watching a lot of stuff and reading a lot of stuff and, you know, getting ideas from other things. Like I just watched, on the way here, I watched Superman 2. I don't know why, I haven't seen it in years, but I'm watching it and I'm thinking, it started making me think about villains, because the villains in that are so cool, and how can I apply these villain ideas to my villains? You know what I mean? It was just letting your mind wander when you're reading or watching other things. So.
Yeah, thank you. And now you know you have to write faster to get these books out more, because they're actually good.
It's true, I'm a slow writer, it's not good.
I told security I wasn't going to disrupt the panel, but here I am.
Okay, don't disrupt the panel.
Okay, then can I just show you this?
Who's on the right?
That's my OC.
Oh, okay.
The one that yelled at you at the autograph session.
Right.
For any of those, anybody who hated the season 3 finish, here you go.
I think we can start taking spoiler questions, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, if you...
I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, not sorry. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying, I think we can start taking spoiler questions. So if you don't want to get spoilers for the book, but you want to ask spoilery questions, like the fact that Evie is made of chocolate. Oh no!
Oh no!
Wait!
No! Actually, I just real quick, do you have a Sharpie up there? Can I get it? Can I
don't
get this
have
in?
one. Oh, Ted's got. And I want to say something about spoiler. about what you said.
Oh, and also, if you don't have a copy yet, right in the secondary entrance to the vendor hall, the Red Balloon bookstore is right there selling copies, and you can get them signed as well. So, for all those who don't have a copy yet.
Oh, good.
Is it safe?
All right, are they gone?
Everybody gone?
See ya.
Going once, twice.
Turn up the music, turn down the lights.
All right.
Turned down for what?
All right, so at the beginning of the book,
I win.
Yeah.
I might have missed it, but when they call upon anyone can come join Pennyroyal now. Just we need people, just come. Was there age limitations on it, or was it could like my Granny Smith go up there and be like, I'm ready to be a princess?
They basically, that's a kind of a weird, squishy thing because I always thought they were 15, but my editor told me do not put that in there. I'm not really sure why, but it made sense to me because if you read Grimm's fairy tales, they never say how old anybody is. They just say the girl, the boy. And so it was kind of Grimm's kind of thing to not say.
15 is the minimum or the maximum?
It would be first year, you'd be 15. But also, I think it's probably not really set in stone. They probably didn't keep track of their years like that or something.
Probably. Moons is what they probably used.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of, this is such a cop-out, but just like fairy tale logic. You just, oh, I'm the right age, so I'll go.
All right. Thanks.
So, towards the middle of the story, Evie actually meets her sister, her dragon sister again, and her sister tells her that father's dead and mother's just gone. Is there any chance that Evie will re-meet her mother in future stories?
I mean, yes, because the idea was she's off looking for the father, so she's not gone, she just goes away for a long time, then she'll come back for a bit, then she'll go off again. So, yeah.
Okay.
I would think so.
I work at a library at my hometown, and first of all, I want to say I didn't know you actually wrote this book.
Oh, really?
I was looking on Amazon with like Shannon Hale and Tamara Pierce books. I'm like, oh, there's this book that you should look at. I'm like, oh, it looks really good. M.A. Larson, that sounds familiar.
Really?
I'll just get it. And so I pre-ordered it, and then I read the back panel.
That's
the
crazy.
author's name. I'm like, Larson. But I just wanted to ask two questions to go off of the dragon question. Are dragons going to feature more in the
You want me
following?
to do me to say that?
I would
Yeah,
like
I mean, definitely, because
Okay.
in fact, this goes back to what I was going to say about your point, developing this character. The whole idea from the beginning was, and this is part of the Bruno Bettelheim book too, is about integrating your psyche. So she's a human, raised as a dragon, and she has one foot in both those worlds, and she doesn't feel comfortable in either one. And by the end of it, she's kind of fusing them together into one integrated personality. But I think there's still a lot. In fact, I will tell you this, because it's kind of a spoiler. At the beginning of the second one, which I'm doing now, she is feeling like the needle is pointing more towards human, but she's home with her family, the dragon. So yeah, her mother is there. She's home with her dragon family, but now she's like, I don't really fit in here. I wish I was back at school with my human friends. And now there's conflict between her and her dragon family because she's sort of rejecting them because of everything she's learned over the years. So she's still dealing with identity issues even after realizing who she is. So yeah, there's definitely
like,
more.
there's the sisters in the Calavine, is that how you use? I don't know.
Calavine, yeah.
But it said like, oh, the dragons and princesses don't have an alliance.
Right.
Are you gonna expand on that?
Yeah, there will definitely be more of like the macro war kind of stuff too, yeah.
Okay. And also my second question, why Basil?
Why him or why his name?
Why him?
Why him?
Or Basil.
He's, he's like, I don't know, most of the comments I've seen, people love him. You don't like him?
I do love him, I just feel very bad for him. as the youngest in my family of 6 sisters, I feel bad for him.
So you can relate.
Yes, I can.
He comes out all right.
Alright.
He's happy.
We're going to think there's a promise.
What's that?
Did he and Anasek get together?
Come on, I'm not going to ship for you.
I'm answering questions that my library kids ask, so.
Not her.
Okay.
Somebody else, but not her.
That's actually, so you were mentioning the idea about the human and the dragons, and then also sort of being part human and part dragon, and then also she mentioned that you showed up sort of among Shannon Hale and Tamora Pierce, and there's also, I mean, there's definite sort of the same threads from things like Shannon Hale's Princess Academy or Tamora Pierce's Alana series, but there's also, the one that I kind of kept going back to is, it's a manga series, Osamu Tezuka's Princess Knight, in which, due to an accident, this girl ends up with both the pink heart of a girl and the blue heart of a boy. That's a little bit weirdly sexist in that sense, but it ends up making her this figure of a princess who's also a knight and having these two hearts within her. And that was the thing an element that kept kind of choking at me when I was reading this.
That's really interesting. I mean, because Bedlam talks about how a lot of the kids in Grimm's fairy tales turn into animals, or giants are surrogates for parents because they're big, angry. They can turn on a dime and be angry. And there's a lot of like kids don't really understand when they feel like raging. They don't get it. And then they also have these parts where they love their parents and they don't understand it. And it's all these different aspects of their
it's like an externalization of different parts of them. I mean, that was another reason I also like that there is this connection between princesses and witches, and that princesses are partially born, or witches are partially born from princesses. And Evie sort of fulfills all of those in a way. She's part princess and part dragon, but she also has some of the martial aspects of being a knight and some of the bizarre, creepy backstory. Not creepy backstory, but it has some elements that sort of weave her into being a part witch as well.
I think that's right, and I think that's true for everybody. Everybody feels pulled in the compass one way, like that. So I don't think anybody's 100% princess or witch or whatever. So that's where the character of Melora will come in the future. Is she's a witch, but she's also been raised as a human, so she's feeling pulled in all these directions too. And
I'm looking forward to Melora coming around and
she's my favorite.
Doing more interesting characters.
She intentionally starts. They're saying out of time, so I'll be quick. She starts out intentionally as this really over-the-top bully, like, oh, there's the bully and the evil stepsister or whatever. But then over time, you sort of understand why that is. And by the end, I have great sympathy for her.
We all do. I do.
She's still horrible, but
but you know why she's horrible.
Yeah. So I guess that's it.
Are we done? I guess we're done.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Whose dolphin is this? Whose pen is this?